we'll turn it a little positive. I found this today, and you can find the article at GatorsBreakdown.com of, hey, maybe all this hot seat talk and talk of a tough schedule, maybe that can be remedied a bit by the experience Florida brings back, and kind of caught my eye a bit. I've been kind of waiting for this, and Bill Connolly does some great work there with his SP Plus. I know it was independent for a while, and ESPN picked it up a few years ago, and he's been really lauded for all his research and his formula that goes into his rankings. And Florida ranks favorably in returning production, returning 68% of their production. That does count transfers as well, and that ranks 32nd out of 134 teams. And Connolly goes on to say, on average, teams returning at least 80% of production improved by about 6.4 adjusted points per game in the following season. That's a pretty significant jump for a team ranked 25th in SP Plus last year. Adding 6.4 points to its rating would have bumped it to about 13th. And if we lower the bar to just 70%, that's about where Florida is in returning production. A bar 25 teams currently clear, that's been enough to boost teams by an average of 4 points since 2014. So Florida hovering around that point there. But if you dig deeper, Florida does rank 4th in the SEC in returning production, and that's only behind Texas A&M at 18th, Texas at 25th, and Missouri at 31st. Missouri one spot ahead of Florida as far as returning production goes. Of course, Florida has to play Texas A&M and Texas, but was a bit surprising to me. Maybe it shouldn't be, where Florida has some experience coming back in like Graham Mertz, the offensive line, Montrell Johnson, Trey Wilson. On defense, you got Cam Jackson, Jordan Castell, bringing in Triquez Bridges, Asa Turner, Joey Slackman. I mean, there are plenty of snaps that this team took last year, whether it be on Florida's roster or not. But maybe all this talk of a tough schedule, it's warranted, of course, but maybe there's a way to, I think best way to explain it, in what we're looking at right now, still a couple of wins. Florida, maybe right now, don't look like they should get.
How accurate is this Bill Connolly, Dave? Is he pretty on the mark with some of his predictions and stuff each year in, year out?
That is something I did want to go back and look at now. I did, just because I was interested, I did pull up last year's college football teams returning production for 2023 season to kind of get a comparison. And number one last year was Florida State, undefeated regular season. Kansas was number 2. They were, having a pretty good season. Injuries kind of dealt with them a little bit there. Michigan was number 5, going on to win the national championship. Texas A&M was 7. Missouri was number 9 last year, so they fall all the way to 31st this year. So that they took advantage. But like top 10 was Florida State, Kansas, FAU, Wyoming, Michigan, UConn, Texas A&M, Boston College, Missouri, Temple. USC was 14. So probably once you given they were returning a Heisman Trophy winner and they were the 14th most experienced team in the country, yeah, you can definitely say that was probably disappointing. Utah was 16. And look, that was with Cam Rising coming into the season, never played a down last year for them. Washington was number 22. Let's see. Wisconsin was 27 in the new head coach year. Auburn was 28 in the new head coach year. Ole Miss was 30th, by the way. Right around Florida. Florida's 32nd. Ole Miss was 71% returning production. They were around where Florida is now. Speaking of the spot number 32, guess who was in spot number 32 last year? That was one LSU with 71% returning. And compare that to Florida, as I said, and Florida ranked 68%. So, a couple percentage points in there. You start grouping those teams there. Ole Miss, LSU, Duke was number 33 with 71% as well. But then you keep looking on Miami with 70%. Clemson was 69%. So, there's some pluses and minuses there, but especially at the top. I mean, your two teams that play for the national championship, Washington, Michigan, were up near the top, or they were pretty high. When you go and look at it, Washington 22, Michigan number 5. I do think it would probably go through a little bit of a history with it, but maybe just some deeper dives into what this could mean for Florida. But all in all, I think put it this way, it won't hurt Florida. It can only help.
Do they use just they go by like snaps played, but for each position?
Good question. I don't think I put that in the article because I didn't want to steal all of the content there.
But I'd like to know. Like, how much of like some of these teams.
Yeah, we'll discuss.
Are transferred and how many are returning starters. That kind of makes a difference on returning experience. I mean, I get what they're saying. We've got the transfers coming in, and he's got however many snaps, and that's counted in. But these guys haven't all played together on the team, as one.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that answered my mind as well. He does say, quite crudely, if a player transfers from one FBS school to another, I mash his production from his previous team into the numerator and denominator for his new team. So if your quarterback leaves and you bring in a transfer who was starting somewhere else, that dampens the overall blow of your quarterback leaving significantly. The example he brings up is FSU. Jordan Travis leaving, but DJ Uiagalelei coming in. So, the equation, it doesn't get hit as hard. But he does.
I got you.
He does go on for offense current weights. He says there's the current weighting for determining the offensive percentage goes like this. Percentage of wide receiver tight end is 23.5% of the overall number. Returning quarterback passing yards is 24% of the number. Returning offensive line snaps played is 47.5%. Let you know the how he values the game of football and how it's being played right now. Percent of returning running back rushing yards is only 5% of his equation on offense. For defense, it is percent of returning tackles at 69.5%. So it's not just necessarily position by position on defense. It's percent of returning tacklers at 69.5%. Percent of returning passes defended is 12%. That's intercepted or broken up. Percent of returning tackles for loss is 10.5%. And percent of returning sacks goes at 8%. So he goes by position, linebackers make up of about 44% of the defensive formula. Pretty important right there, right? For Florida's recruiting class, getting Pup Howard in, Shamar James returning. So he puts a lot of value in the linebacker position. You go back to our conversation with Will last week and what he showed, it's more of a defensive backfield heavy as far as what PFF numbers show. It's just one analytic, one way to look at it. Bill Connolly seems to go and really puts a lot of value into the linebacker spot. So good for Florida and for Connolly's route of putting a lot of weight on linebackers and what Florida did with getting Pup Howard and the true freshman class. And also going to the kind of PFF and weighing what Will was able to plot out last week, Florida getting a whole lot of experience on in the defensive backfield. And keep looking at this experience. One more thing, Seth Varnador. I'm glad he retweeted it on Twitter, and I want to share it right here. I want to share it right here in the episode. But it was the late going back to 2019 returning production and what it meant for Florida. 2019, Florida brought back 74% of its roster, 77% on offense, 71% on defense. So that we know 2019 ended up with only 2 losses. Your only 2 losses were LSU and Georgia that year. Go to 2020, 65% of the team returned, 63 on offense, 67 on defense. And went on to play Alabama in the SEC championship games, inexcusable losses along the way. The 2 Texas A&M, LSU, the inexcusable performance in the bowl game. But then, you lose a lot of those pieces. In 2021, the year Dan Mullen got fired, only returning 54% of the roster, 43% on offense, of course. You lose Kyle Trask and Tony and Pitts, and 65% in the defense, but the defense, of course, still because that's kind of crazy now looking at these numbers and why, and just looking at it and seeing how bad this defense was in 2019. The defense wasn't terrible. We going into 2020, what was the narrative about the Florida defense? It was to get better in the big games. Because besides that, they were okay. They were okay, but not against Georgia, not against LSU. Not many defenses were good against LSU in 2019. But still, that 2019 defense, 71%. Then you returned 67% in 2020, and the defense falls off of a cliff. Not great in 2021, 65% of it returned. 2022, Billy Napier's first year, 64% of the defense. Still not great. Still couldn't get better with Patrick Toney coming in. And then last year, of course, 53%. Austin Armstrong comes in. We know all the new pieces. We just talked about all the youth that played last year. But the last 2 years, guys, Billy Napier's first year, last year for Billy Napier, 2022, his first year, 55% returning. 2023, 54% returning overall. 2024, 68%. So hovering around 55% the last 2 years, and now a jump all the way to 68%. So, we can throw the youth excuse out the window, the experience excuse out the window. There is a schedule that's really tough, but this tells me, all right, maybe, just maybe, you got enough experience to overcome this very, very tough schedule Florida has.